When the layoff came, I sort of was confronted with a choice where I realized, hey, these other guys in my group is getting impacted by this thing, right? Is there anything I could potentially do? And I got our positions on that layoff list swapped. I bumped myself to the top of the list by them a little bit of time. Like the first maybe 3, 4 weeks, it was all of these emotions like disorientation. I was shocked. I felt numb by the whole experience. And then that quickly sort of transitioned into sadness or depression. I was grieving about this thing that I spent so many years working on. My parents, it's sort of like a process for them. Like first, it was shame, typical Asian family shame. Like you have fallen from the pinnacle of your career. You've dishonored yourself. How will you ever like get back to like this prestigious like whatever place that you were? You know, the guys that entered into tech in the late 90s, early 2000s, like if you could qualitatively measure their skills against the junior engineers that are getting to tech today, they would not measure up. The crop of engineers today, in my opinion, is way more excellent from a skill perspective than these guys.
In this conversation with Asian Dad Energy, we discuss how he walked away from 25 years in big tech on his own terms to protect the people around him, why your job may be running your life on autopilot and robbing you of the things that you will never get back, and how he quietly built enough financial freedom that no paycheck could ever hold him hostage again. This is part one of the highlights from our conversation with Asian Dad Energy on our live show, Memes and Markets. Let's dive in.
What is going on? And welcome back to Memes and Markets. Keith, how are you, man?
Today is the best day of my life, Ben. How you doing?
Today is a fantastic day for me, too. We got Asian Dad Energy, one of my favorite YouTube follows as of late. So, hello, welcome to the show. Let's give you the opportunity to give a brief introduction to everyone, and then we'll get into it.
Hey there. Thanks, Ben and Keith, for having me on today. My name is Asian Dad Energy, or at least my handle on YouTube. I am a recently laid off ex big tech software engineer with 25 years of experience in the tech industry. As kind of a self therapy, I started uploading vlogs of me just ranting on YouTube. And I think that's how maybe some folks have found me. But nice to meet everyone and get ready to enjoy this podcast.
100%. So, you're one of the only people that I've heard it pronounced vlog. Is that from your technical background for why you say it like that?
Nah. So back in the day, like in the early 2000s, when
Huh.
video recording was first kind of took off a little bit, people used to call it vlogs.
Okay.
And so that's just how I call it.
That's
I can
awesome.
I guess I could try to call it vlog, but it just
No,
sounds a
no,
little
no,
unusual
don't.
for me.
Don't. I love it. Honestly, that was something so cool. I was like, I love how he says that. So no, that's awesome.
So you're blowing up on YouTube, man. Like you started this 3 months ago. Is that proper?
Yeah, just about.
That's absurd. So when you started this whole thing, did you expect to get this kind of attention?
No, no, not at all. So here was what's happening, right? I had been laid off for a couple of weeks at that point, and I was in this huge downer mentally, just not knowing what to do, how to move forward, kind of feeling a little depressed, maybe more than a little bit. So I am seeing a therapist, right, to talk through things. And the therapist mentioned, like, hey, journaling is a great way of, getting your thoughts out there and really just like getting your thoughts out and feeling better in the process. Right. And so I was actually about to write everything down onto my notebook where I sort of like sketch all of my ideas and stuff like this book over here. And then I just got too lazy and I had my camera right next to it. And I was thinking, hey, it's going to be far easier for me just to record my internal monologue than to spend all this time writing it down. So I did that. And I had this YouTube channel that I actually had set up for something completely different months beforehand. I'm like, let me just post it up here. Totally
So
didn't
awesome.
expect that response. I was actually just trying to do this as a form of self therapy.
That's the best stuff, honestly, because so like Keith started YouTube, what was it, 8 months ago now, 7 months ago, Keith?
Yeah, about 9 now.
Yeah.
Yep.
And very similar situation. Both of you guys were just being real, honest, and like sharing your experience. And Keith had a video, one of his like first 10 or so, when that got over 1 million, right? Which one was the
Yeah, the
bond
bond
one?
video.
Yeah, and
Somebody
then
somebody
that's it.
just
Nice.
copied that video again, by the or the title
Another
again.
copy?
Yes, and people are calling him out. It's funny, man.
That's a
Sorry.
compliment to you. But yeah, Asian Data Energy, your very first video got 1.1 million views. That had to have been pretty surreal.
That it was crazy. Like, it was kind of unbelievable because I've never actually done vlogs before ever. And to see 1 million views is sort of like, wow, I must have struck a nerve or something to get
Yes.
that kind of response.
Oh, definitely. I think your situation is one that either a lot of people are going through in particular, or it's one of their biggest fears that will happen to them. So I think you talking about it open and honestly, especially given 25 years in tech, like it's not like you were some recent grad, which is what typically gets talked about. So if you mind, like walking us through the experience of like when you got laid off, if they told you why you got laid off, and then bring us to your journey to YouTube.
Yeah, sure. So, I've been working in tech for many, many years, right? I was kind of like a senior level enterprise architect at the big tech company that I'm working with. And in recent years, certainly after the whole COVID bump, right, there has just been a lot of layoffs in big tech in general. And it got to the point where it was just happening in waves. You could expect on any given year, you'll have at least one big round,
Wow.
sometimes multiple big rounds, right? And so last year, I had already experienced a couple of years of this. So I sort of like in the back of my mind, I knew it was coming at some point, right? But what happened on the ground was I had really great relationships with my management and executive leadership. And I sort of caught wind of this along the grapevines that, hey, this is coming and I'm likely to be impacted. And at the same time, I also caught wind of like, hey, there's other folks within our sort of business unit and group that's impacted. A couple of them fairly junior folks. At that point, I had a lot of sort of thoughts in my head just about the nature and the purpose of working in tech and whether sort of like it's worth it from a personal growth, from a time with family, the point of life and existence perspective. So I had a lot of these questions swirling in my head anyway at that point. So when the layoff came, I sort of was confronted with a choice where I realized, hey, these other guys in my group is getting impacted by this thing, right? Is there anything I could potentially do? And so I sort of worked the grapevines a little bit and I got our positions on that layoff list swapped, where I bumped myself to the top of the
Wow.
list. And that sort of can then buy them a little bit of time. Um, Now, with everything said, right, these sort of layoffs, as I understand it, there's really no escaping it. So even if I tried hard and I threw people under the bus or whatever I could do, I may be able to save myself once, but eventually, when the next round comes along, I'm going to be cut no matter what. So I sort of was very clear on that going into the situation. So I was thinking, hey, if that's the case, let me buy these junior guys a little bit of extra time before the next round,
Wow.
and I'll just gracefully exit. So that's when I sort of worked this thing right now. To the credit of my big tech employer, they were super kind of chill about it in the sense that, they gave me a very, very, I would think, generous kind of severance package. We sort of got a garden leave where I'm still on the payrolls, but I could look for jobs outside. There was a very good severance. They sort of gave stipends and all of that. So it was a very kind of amicable parting, if you will. But even afterwards, that's still like I was still kind of like shocked and I was still kind of depressed. So it's an interesting journey. I didn't really expect it. I
Mm.
was thinking of it, but not expecting it to happen so soon. But it
Oh,
happened.
oh, that's super admirable of you to make that sacrifice to put yourself on the top of the list. I don't think many people would do that. So was it just the fact that you were already having these internal debates that made you do that, or what was the primary motivation?
So there were a couple of different things that kind of was going on in my head, right? One is the whole trade off of like, hey, the hard work, the building things, building software that may not actually matter questions, like these sort of existential questions, right? It's like I'm trading my life, my time with family, all of this stuff, right, for this paycheck. And is that a worthy trade? That's the first question, right? The second item is that, our family has been pretty frugal, really ever since 2008, the great financial crisis. That crisis really shook me up, and I think in hindsight it was a good thing. That scared the crap out of me at the time, because all these people, like super senior, like capable engineers, were getting laid off left and right. So that freaked me out. Then I started kind of saving more money, getting out of debt, right? Investing the money into prudent investment assets. And so by the time my layoff came, right, I sort of like was at the point where it's like I didn't really need to work to pay for my very kind of frugal and modest living expenses. So there's that second angle of like there isn't like a financial need for me to keep going as well. It's nice that the money is nice. Don't get me wrong. Big tech salary is very nice. I'm not complaining about the huge paychecks, but there wasn't like, hey, if you don't work, you're gonna starve to death type of threat either.
Mm,
So those two factors sort of just almost like nudged me over
got
the
it.
cliff here.
And so even after doing that, you said that you dealt with some mental struggles after doing so. Was that because of the lost identity, or what was that from, if you can put your finger on it?
Yeah, so it felt like everything. Like the first maybe 3, 4 weeks, it was all of these emotions, like disorientation. Like I was shocked. I felt numb by the whole experience, right? And then that quickly sort of transitioned into a kind of like sadness or depression. It's like I was grieving about this thing that I spent so many years working on, like my, as you say, my identity as an engineer, as a technologist. It's like one of those things. If you're doing it every day, it becomes sort of like a part of you.
Totally.
And it's like something was ripped out of me with this thing. And it's like you go through your day feeling like something is missing. It's almost like you lost a friend, almost like you lost a family member. I know it's crazy. This is like a job working for a corporation, but it's like you lost a part of yourself. And that's what it
Totally.
felt like. I was so depressed for a while. And then the other emotion that I felt was I felt ashamed, because it's like that first month was holiday month. It was December, right? And so then I had to meet up with like my family and my wife's extended family, and then our friends, and all of these cringe parties where people are like, "Hey, how's the work going? Hey, how's the big tech company doing?" Like all of these questions, and it's so shameful and embarrassing, even though there's no justification for it. But I felt so ashamed to say, "Well, I'm not working here anymore. I got to go do something else. I'm working for myself. That's it. Oh yeah, that's it. I'm working for myself." But it's cringe, and that kind of emotion was very strong. The other thing I want to mention is LinkedIn.
Mm.
Man, I have, I had never thought much of LinkedIn, but after my layoff, I kind of have grown to despise that platform.
Yeah.
It's just like, you know how like Instagram has this effect on sort of like teenage kids, right? Mostly
Yes.
teenage girls, because that it introduces this sort of toxic comparison with completely unrealistic portrayals of people, right? It's like LinkedIn does the same thing for white collar workers, man.
1000%.
It's like I open up the feed, and the feed will algorithmically like select the things that cause me the most like anxiety and insecurity. Be like, your friend has now achieved the height of like the corporate ladder. He is at the pinnacle. Or like your other friend or colleague, they have discovered this amazing thing and will be promoted to VP insta. It's like every post is like that. And it honestly, it made me feel so ashamed and like so small. And like, I'm like the biggest loser on planet Earth. Like everybody else is successful except for you. That's sort of like the feeling of LinkedIn. So that was like the first like month, maybe month and a half of the experience, right? And then my mood got better sort of after that. But that's the initial kind of feelings I had.
You're watching the highlights from a conversation on our live show, Memes and Markets. Be sure to subscribe to this channel to make sure that you don't miss the best parts of our conversation from our live streams, where we go live every Tuesday and Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern. Now, back to the highlights.
It's so fascinating. It's crazy how you're right. Like whenever you do stuff that's not the norm, the social costs are often like just as high as the financial ones too, because you know that you're gonna have to explain why you're doing what you're doing to so many people, and you know they're not going to understand it. How did your family respond when you told them that you weren't working there anymore? Like, was there any reactions that come to mind?
Yeah. So my immediate family, like my dear wife, she actually supports me 100%.
Amazing.
So like she's like, hey man, do whatever you want.
That's
You
awesome.
earned this. Like you suffered long enough with this. That was her exact words. And so I'm always appreciative of her for saying that. My kids are oblivious, all right, because they go to school, right? They see me doing something, they come back and I'm doing something. So hey, I'm as far as they know, hey, I'm a software engineer doing stuff.
It's no different to them.
Yeah. The extended family is kind of cringe. Okay. Like most people sort of like when they hear that I'm not working for big tech anymore, they sort of just like freeze up and stop talking or poking about it. Like, oh, okay. Yeah. Uh, so that's not that comfortable. My parents, it's sort of like a process for them. Like first, uh, it was shame, typical Asian family
Yeah.
shame. Like you have fallen from the pinnacle of your career. You've dishonored yourself. How will you ever like get back to like this prestigious like whatever place that you were? Uh, and it was hard for me to take initially. And then I think over the course of months, sort of my parents gradually kind of came around of like, oh, wait, all these other people are also getting laid off in like huge, ridiculous numbers. So maybe you're not so bad after all. You're just a little bit bad. That's sort of like where we are right now.
Hey, that's an improvement.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. That's right. I have to deal with these things, but that's life.
So, so the thing that I'm super curious about is you don't really seem that old to me. You seem pretty young for someone who's at a place where you could just not be working.
Thank you. So I'll tell you the secret. Okay. The secret is I get to work out and eat right every day for the last like almost 4 months at this point. So
Very nice.
I have lost a lot of weight
Nice.
since I've been laid off. I don't know if you noticed that or not, but and I'm
That
like running on the treadmill back there an hour every day.
wow.
And
Yeah,
cooking my own meals, organic, healthy vegetables and fruits. So I'm feeling better too. I'm
that's
feeling
awesome.
younger too. But Keith, to your point about how to do this, right? I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not qualified to be giving any sort of financial advice at all. But what I can share is what we did, right? So we started this journey. My wife and I, we were in a huge amount of debt. Okay, like we had like almost 150 grand of educational debt mainly. Um, I had my undergrad that I of course didn't pay off. But even by the time we got married, right? Like this is like late 20s, didn't pay off the school debt. I was just paying the minimums. My wife also had the school debt. So us putting it together, it's like six-figure sum of debt that was there, right? So what we did was once 2008, 2009 came around, that sort of scared the bejesus out of us. And we started like thinking about we got to pay off this debt ASAP Rocky, right? And so we really, really kind of made our lifestyles a bit more frugal to try to save the money to pay the debt. And then on the side, I was working in consulting as a software engineer at the time, right? But on the side, so this was like 2010, right? This is when the iPhone had just dropped for a couple of years and like the Android phones were first coming into the market. So I created this like moonlight side business, um, making apps specifically for Android phones. And so I coded all of these generic cookie cutter apps like bird manuals, right? Or kitchen timers, like flashlights that you would blink at night and you would run, like, in the park. That these sort of apps, and at the time, back in 2010, 2011, there were very few apps in the Android marketplace. And so there was this brief period of time, maybe like a year or two, where like any app would make money. Like you can imagine the dumbest possible app idea, and then somebody would pay for it because the marketplace was so small. And so, like at the time, every one of these ridiculous apps that I pushed up there, they all sold. Every single one of them sold. And it got to the point where like I was making six figure, like one year, this was 2011. I made like 100 grand from these ridiculous like cookie cutter apps. Um, yeah. So I took that money along with the frugality, and then we were able to pay off all of our school debt. Um, and so that then freed up a bunch of money, right? And so we kept saving the money, and then we use the money to sort of acquire assets, right? Meaning like you buy a house, you buy a modest house, right? Like where we didn't go and buy a McMansion of any sort. A modest home that's within commuting range of work. And that allows you, because the house size is modest, it allows you to pay off the mortgage more quickly, right? Not over 30 years, but over just a few years because it's a modest size. Similarly, from the savings, you can take that money, you can put it into investments that will earn dividends and interest, right? So, like financial investments, mainly for us, it was index funds, equities based index funds in the S&P 500, and bond, kind of like broad market bond funds for the most part. Um, so that sort of allowed us to kind of build a financial kind of cushion or buffer, right? There's also mistakes that I made, a lot of mistakes. I tried dabbling in like buying individual tech stocks purely based on memes and hype, and I lost a lot of money doing that. It happens, right? Um, there's also windfalls that happen to me as well. After a number of years within the consulting industry, I decided I wanted a change, and that change was to go into big tech. Um, and so that was about 7 years ago. So when I joined my big tech employer, that was sort of like when I realized, oh crap, big tech pays like a lot. It like pays way more than consulting, even though consulting already paid pretty well in the first place. And so I was introduced to this whole concept of like RSU packages and then ESPP packages. Essentially, there are these tranches of company stock that they award you for various reasons, right? Or you have the option of buying the company stock at a discount over the market price. So I got all these stocks, but then COVID hit. If you guys remember, like with COVID, right? You had this giant stock market crash initially, like in the first couple of months, and then it sort of went up, and especially the tech companies, because everybody was at home and they needed these digital tools and platforms to do everything. So the stock price of the company that I was working for, they went way up just as I was being awarded the first tranches of these stocks. And so then I'm like, hey, I'm not going to sell this. Why don't I hold on to this stock? Just because it's going up. And I just kept holding and holding and holding. And it just went up and up and up. Like, it went up 50%, went up 100%, doubled, tripled, right? So then I sort of then end up with a big chunk of money in this one stock, that I sort of then got scared around 2024. And then that was because this whole AI thing that all the tech company is pushing, I have this strong feeling that it's a bubble, and we're kind of living on borrowed time. And it may be, the feeling may be true, maybe it's false, maybe I'm wrong or whatever, right? But it spooked me enough that I'm starting to sort of sell this big tech stock one chunk at a time. But I have to be careful because long-term capital gains, there's a tax implication if you try to sell it all at once, right? So I'm trying to do it a chunk at a time to get it out with the minimum amount of tax penalty. And it's going to take me some time. But if you put all of this stuff together, right, that's sort of how we built this financial cushion whose interest and dividends and rents would pay for our living expenses. Long answer to a short question, Keith, but does that sort of answer it?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's super interesting, man. I feel like being in tech at the right time can really, really have a massive impact on just upside. So you've done the right things also and taken advantage of that opportunity as well. A lot of people might not be as cognizant of the fact that you're sitting with that much wealth in one stock, right? That's a lot of risk that people take on in their lives and don't think about. So very, very intelligent of you also to get that in order and think about the ways to divest from that.
I think really emphasis, and I try to emphasize it. I'm not sure if folks understand that or not, right? If you look at like media, the way they talk about like finances or building up that cushion, right? It's this impression that it's the person that does everything, right? It's like, oh, if you just work hard enough, right? If you methodically do this, then this will then happen for you. To a degree, I agree with that. Like people should work hard. They should be frugal. They should invest and they will improve their situation if they do that. But I think, at least from my experience or empirically, as you said, the timing and the luck factor, it's a disproportionate impact on things, right? Like you could in tech, right, where I have experience. The guys that entered into tech in the late '90s, early 2000s, like if you could qualitatively measure their skills, right, against, for example, the junior engineers that are getting to tech today, they would not measure up. The crop of engineers today, in my opinion, is way more excellent from a skill perspective than these guys, but it's purely because of the timing that they're able to essentially reap the benefits, right? They were able to get those stock packages before the stock market valuations went crazy. And so it's almost like yes, your own effort, initiative, and discipline plays a part, but it's kind of my opinion, as crazy as it sounds. But I feel like at this time, it seems like luck and timing plays a bigger part. I know it's crazy, but it seems like it based on evidence that I'm observing.
And I, in no way, by the way, meant to in any way try to diminish, right, the things that you've done and how you've gotten to where you are. Um, and I greatly respect your ability to, in any way, look from the outside and see that some of that plays a role. But yeah, no, I mean, both of the things that you've said, I mean, there's no way that you get to that position without having done the things, without having been on the right path, without having, prepared yourself for all of the things that have come your way. So I do want to be super clear about that. I realized as I was saying it, it could have come off and you didn't take it wrong. So I really appreciate
All good.
that as well. But the other thing that I think is super cool about your story here that we didn't know until just now is how you've been able to take care of yourself a little bit. I think that's really, really cool. When we look at America right now, the state of this country is really bad. From when we look at the health perspective, the whole obesity thing that we have going on, and we've also got right this past week we saw all of these like warehouse fires, and we see these AI CEOs getting attacked, and people are just really feeling a huge crunch right now, and people are unhappy. But I really think it's so wild to me that just a few months off of work and you've just like completely reshaped your body. You said you're feeling better. How much of a threat do you think it is to people in their work lives, like to not be thinking about their health? I mean, do you think that you could have potentially been in a different path if you were still working, or is it not that serious and just something that you feel good about having changed?
I think it's very serious, Keith. Um, when you're working, right, especially if you're working in like a cognitively intensive white collar profession like tech, there's a lot of like intangible aspects of your life that you let slip by the wayside, right? Your health is probably the most obvious aspect of it. You don't take the time to eat right. You don't take the time to sort of like work out, get enough sleep, and take the time to nourish and take care of your own physical body. So that's the most obvious sign. But also there's sort of like the mental and the spiritual side of it as well, right? Like imagine when I'm working this much at work and constantly focused on what's going on there, right? The various projects, initiatives, timelines that are happening. I just didn't have the mental bandwidth and capacity to sort of fully engage with my family, with my wife and my kids. And sort of like that engagement, there are some almost like priceless moments that comes from that engagement, right? Like, for example, I had the time over the last couple of months to help my son with a science project. He's in the STEM program of our local high school, to help him with this project. Okay. And to help him essentially create a hypothesis and figure out ways of implementing it. Like that was such an incredible kind of bonding moment. Um, at least I thought so. Maybe he thinks I'm a lame, like old dude over there, but for me, it felt like incredible. Okay. That would have just not existed if I was still working. All right. So there is that mental aspect that work almost like it cheats people of those experiences in a way. And then there's sort of like the spiritual part of it, right? In the sense that like people who are doing things that are kind of not of their own volition. So like when you're working, right, you're doing this set of preset things. Every task is different, but they follow these broad kind of patterns, right? You got your TPS reports, you have your sprint review, you go through features, build things. What ends up happening in my observation is that my mind would kind of almost go on a kind of autopilot mode. It's not that I'm not there and I'm not doing the work, but it's just that you sort of gloss over your experience and your reality to get through the workday and the work week. And you don't even realize that, or I didn't realize that until I stopped working. Because after a couple of months of being laid off, I had to fill my time somehow, right? And every day I deliberately, intently fill my day when the kids are in school with activities that I choose, right? Like deliberate choice of activities. And the weird thing, and I'll get back to the spiritual aspect, is that when you're deliberate and cognizant about what you're doing every day and all the time, you seem to experience, or I seem to experience more life happening in the same amount of time. It's a really weird experience, but like imagine a work week. All right. That work week feels to me like it was like a couple of days back when I was working. Now the same work week feels like twice or even three times as much things have happened. And it's because my mind is off of this sort of autopilot treadmill. So that's another kind of a big, Keith, in my mind, mental shift, right? That just happened. And it's a positive one, in my opinion.
You're watching the highlights from a conversation on our live show, Memes and Markets. Be sure to subscribe to this channel to make sure that you don't miss the best parts of our conversation from our live streams, where we go live every Tuesday and Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern. Now, back to the highlights. Very interesting. Very, very, very interesting, man. The other thing that I really wanted to zoom back in on is like this idea of the shame that can come from not being at the big tech job anymore. Because I feel like right now, at least for younger people, like young people probably don't want to work at all, right? If they could find a way to just, you know, be a YouTube person and just whatever, like that's kind of like the goal, right? And also yourself being in a position where you already financially were good to go. How do you think that maybe your upbringing or culture or anything like that plays a role in the way that people look at working as like a virtue versus financial freedom as the virtue?
That's a really great question, Keith. I think it changes based on the generation involved here, right? Let me paint a picture of what my parents' perspective of success would be, right? My parents are essentially part of the boomer generation that was born right after World War II, right? And this picture is going to sound perhaps unrealistic, but I think it's a true picture. So my mom's vision of me being successful is I'm at the top of this pyramid like corporate hierarchy, okay? Where I would have this corner office, I would have legions of yes men sort of reporting or laddering up to me. I would have a secretary that buys me lunch and so on and so forth. And then I would then sort of like sail off into the sunset at the top of this industry wearing a business suit. Okay. Um, that perspective is a perspective, right? And that perspective comes from my mom's own experiences, in that when she was growing up and when she was in her career, that is the ideal sort of success track, right? It also comes from the perspective of essentially that, like, hey, she never got laid off ever in her life, right? That she was able to have a full career and retire honorably at the normal retirement age. Um, Now that that paradigm obviously has changed, right? Like, number one, the corporations are so unstable and layoffs are so frequent that you could never have a stable pyramidal structure like that in the first place. And number two, I think automation and IT has possibly removed the need of the legions of yes men and secretaries running around. I think we have software and apps to do most of that kind of stuff, right? So that idea of shame and the need of being in a corporate or a hierarchical structure, and the only way of measuring success is to sort of like achieve some sort of a level at a brand name company, that is kind of, in my opinion, generational, right? And cultural. Um, the problem, as I see it, is that reality has significantly diverged from that ideal of success, in the sense that the reality of our economy and society may not really be able to sustain this kind of a myth for much longer or at all. Even I think for young people, and I may be off base here, but I feel like for the majority of young people, like the Gen Z guys, like my son or 10 years older than my son, I think what I just described is a fantasy. I think maybe I'm wrong, right? And the truth is that, like, there is no employment stability that would allow most people to even get onto the rungs of this hierarchy. And the entire economy has changed, where the way to getting opportunity is coming hard and fast and much, much more unpredictably, where you can hop from like nothing to being like a multimillionaire if you just happen to be in the right startup, where you happen to have the right opportunity. Right? Maybe it is, as you said, you're a YouTuber and your YouTube channel explodes with 1 million viewers, subscribers, and all of a sudden you're now successful. So that paradigm of success, in my opinion, has shifted dramatically, and it's just going to take people's minds some time to adjust to it. It certainly was an adjustment to me, right? I felt like, for a time, I felt like all of a sudden I was a nobody. But then, after a while, I realized, hey, there's an intrinsic worth and value to a person, to a man, that is entirely detached from what part of the corporate ladder he's on.
Super fascinating, man. I appreciate that. And yeah, I mean, because the thing that popped out the most to me was just how nonchalantly you talked about having these apps that you were just making six figures off of in a year as well. I'm like, that's probably the most impressive piece of the entire story is you're working these jobs and doing all of this stuff. And that's just something that was just happening. And yet, like the amount of pride around that it doesn't feel like it's super high, right? But that's probably the most interesting thing that you were able to do throughout all of this as well. So, um, moving forward, a lot of people in the audience today are in the position of trying to figure out what on earth they should be doing. Wait, what you just finished watching was only part one of this highlight from our live show Memes and Markets, where we go live every Tuesday and Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern. But this conversation gets even better. Hit that like button and subscribe and click here to watch the second part of this highlight.